everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this session of the Veterans Advanced Energy Week. I really enjoyed the last conversation on nuclear technology, and I'm excited to dive into this next conversation on the clean technology and what's growing in the world. My name is Stacey Paradis. I'm the Executive Director of the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. We're proud to sponsor this panel. We've been a longtime supporter of the Veterans Advanced Energy Week, and I'll be your moderator today. I also wanted to do a quick thank you to all of our friends out there that have served or in active duty or previously served. My husband and I both each have a nephew in active duty right now, and we appreciate all of your service. I'm pleased to be joined today by a number of colleagues who are going to talk about energy efficiency and how it's really leading the clean energy transition, and then what those future opportunities are for all of us if you're transitioning into the private sector. But before we get started today, I do have a couple of housekeeping notes I'm to go through with you. This event is on the record. We are currently live streaming it on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We encourage you to post about what you're hearing today and share on social media using the hashtag VetsInEnergy and by tagging both AC Global Energy and Vets_energy in your discussions. If you would like to participate with our conversation today, we encourage you to submit questions through the Q&A tab at the bottom. But we would note that you have to be engaged via the Veterans Advanced Energy app to submit those questions. So with that, and before we dive in, I wanted to quickly share with you a couple of overview slides just on energy efficiency here in the Midwest and kind of why energy efficiency is really part of this clean energy transition. Sorry about that, technical difficulty. And so here's our panels today, and we're going to hear from them individually here just shortly. Borggren, VP of Customer Solutions from Commonwealth Edison here in Illinois. Sandrine Shultz, who's the Director of Energy and Sustainability for the Chicago Public Schools, the third largest public school system in the United States. Mike Train, President of Emerson and Chairman Emeritus of the Emerson Automotive Solutions, and then myself. Why is energy efficiency important? I think the biggest thing that we talk about here in the Midwest is it's unknown, unappreciated the size of it. It's almost a $2 billion industry that's happening annually here in the Midwest. And this is both investments in natural gas as well as in energy efficiency. And what does that investment lead to? It leads to substantial savings. And you can see what the growth has been over time and why we talk about energy efficiency really being a leading part of the clean energy transition. But what does that mean? How does that correlate to jobs? How does that correlate to the workforce? And what does it mean for everyone as you're thinking about transitioning into this industry? So if you do a breakdown, here are the energy efficiency jobs by state. Obviously, we have a great diversity, but it is something across our region. And the percentage of those clean energy jobs, more than 70% of them are energy efficiency. So when you hear people generally talk about the clean energy economy, there's a lot of assumption that it's going to be in renewables, really focused in solar energy and wind energy. But the reality is the majority of those jobs, again, in the Midwest, it's over 70% of them are energy efficiency jobs. But unfortunately, the impact of COVID has also had a substantial impact on our industry. You can see here what the job losses have been in just the last 3 months and the substantial impact that they've had. And then again, this just gives you a sense of how that breakdown is for all of the jobs lost across our states. But when we talk about it for energy efficiency and kind of the opportunity of us to kind of be part of the response to COVID and how we can bring our economy back. Again, clean energy jobs grew twice as fast in the Midwest than other jobs. As I said before, 70% of the clean energy jobs are energy efficiency jobs. An important note too, veterans make up 11% of all clean energy workers. That is something that is far above the national average. Another piece as we think about transitioning into the private sector, small businesses are what's driving the clean economy. 70% of all of those businesses are really, and those are less than 20 employees, are the main focus of that clean energy economy. The other thing to note, more and more, and you'll maybe hear later in our discussion today, utilities and governments are prioritizing contracts for folks that are minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and also veteran-owned businesses. So that, again, provides another great opportunity. But lastly, as we talk about the impacts of COVID, as we talk about energy efficiency, it really is the key pathway to our economic recovery. It's going to put people back to work, but it's also going to improve the health and resiliency of the buildings that some of us are still sheltering in place in, and how we can all work together to make that the better for all of us. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then I want to give our panelists each a chance to introduce themselves. So the first thing I think I'll call on you individually. I'd like for you guys to talk through what your backgrounds are, what your current position is, and what your experience has been in the military or working with veterans or in the military. So Erica, why don't I start with you first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. As Stacey mentioned, I'm Erica Borggren, and these days, I'm Vice President of Customer Solutions at ComEd, which is the energy delivery company in Northern Illinois. But just to give you a bit of my own background, I am from a non-military family, but ended up unexpectedly being a military person myself. I headed off to West Point at the age of 17, having been recruited to play tennis, but really just fallen in love with the nobility of purpose and the service ethic and the challenge of a place like West Point. And so marched off to West Point at a young age and then ended up having a career as a medical service corps officer in Korea, had company command in Korea. And then the second half of my military career was essentially serving as a speechwriter or think tank member for General Petraeus as he was leading the multinational force in Iraq. And later in Afghanistan. So I kind of telecommuted before it became a cool thing to Afghanistan after deploying to Iraq. After leaving active duty, I ended up serving as the director of the Department of Veterans Affairs in Illinois. So essentially like the state VA director in Illinois. And so I still love what we got to do there in terms of the veteran transition, the kinds of things that you're thinking on now, right? So we worked on a veterans hiring tax credit and on an executive order to look at veterans licensing and how we make your experience count when it comes to the civilian world. So did that for a few years. And then after leaving state government, I joined ComEd, at first as our vice president of communications, but in subsequent roles, really leading different parts of our customer operations. And these days in customer solutions, I lead a team that works on all of the programs, the ways that customers have to interact with energy. So we run our energy efficiency programs, dynamic pricing, kind of variable pricing and demand response programs where customers shift the time of their energy usage, our solar offerings, and in the future, likely our electric vehicle and future like offerings. So that's what I do now. I think when you wrap that all up, it means that today and this week's activities really just bring together all the things I love and I'm personally passionate about. So I'm really happy to join you today.
Great. Well, we really appreciate you having us. Sandrine, why don't you go next and share us kind of your story?
So good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I hope everybody in our audience are doing well. And those have been some interesting times that we've been living in. But as Stacey said, I'm currently the Director of Energy and Sustainability for Chicago Public Schools. And my energy career journey to get there started back in 2003 at the Norfolk Navy base as the Mid-Atlantic Utility Energy Manager. I then moved to Washington, D.C., continuing my work in the utility and energy programs at NAVFAC, the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, and Commander Navy Installations Command, CNIC. And after 8 years at CNIC, I moved to the Department of Energy, where I work closely with many of our national labs and especially NREL. And after 3+ years at the Department of Energy, I was offered the opportunity to come to Chicago. As many of you probably know, I love Chicago and working for Chicago Public Schools. But during my career at the Department of Defense, I've had the opportunity to work with, as a civilian, to work with many, many military great leaders. And that was actually the best thing for my job is to meet all these great people and visiting all these different installations, Navy and Marine Corps installation, and learning so much about the mission of each of the installation and studying the facilities and so on, and helping them meet our energy goals and instilling alternative energy to ensure that our installation were resilient. So it's been a great career. CPS has been a learning experience for the past year, and I can't wait to be sharing some additional things that I've learned so far to help our veterans. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sandrine. And Mike, why don't you kind of share a little bit about your background as well as give us all a kind of a synopsis of who Emerson is.
All right, well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody that's out there. Great to join you today. I'm an electrical engineer by background, education. I worked for General Motors for about 7 years. different areas of the business. I got a hankering to go back to school. I don't know why. Ended up doing an MBA and MA Asian Studies with Japanese language training, and joined Emerson. And I've been at Emerson here now for 29 years. I had 3 overseas assignments. I am not a vet personally, but I had 3 deployments as Emerson, if you will, and lived in Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Singapore at different times in my career. Emerson's really related to the automation type of industry. So in a power generation setting, we provide all of the instrumentation and measure everything going on in a facility. We build the control systems and the displays that are used to fly the facility, if you will. And then we have a lot of the actual movers, the actuation and the valves and things in the plant. So we're highly represented in power generation. We're in LNG, oil, pharmaceuticals, factory automation. We also have a part of the business that's around cold chain, refrigeration, a lot of energy efficiency activities, obviously related in those spaces. So a global company, about 88,000 employees. We have a number of veterans here in the company. It's been a great source of talent for us, and people have joined us and made careers with us. So very pleased to be here. Very excited about the conversation today.
Well, Mike, that was a perfect transition, because my first question, I'm gonna kick it to Sandrine first, but I think all of you are going to be able to respond to it. Energy. Energy efficiency is something I'm going to focus on. We can talk about clean energy in the larger space as well, but for the energy efficiency industry, it's about 2.3 million jobs in the U.S. And it far outpaces other sectors of the clean economy, and actually some of the clean energy space, and also generally for most of the energy production space. Veterans make up over 10% of that, and yet they're only 7% of the population. So what is it that you think about that military expertise that really well suits these folks for either the energy efficiency industry, clean energy, or just energy in general? So Sandrine, why don't you go first, and then I'll kick it to the other 2 speakers as well.
Thanks, Stacey. This is actually a great question, and I'm going to answer it from, again, my experience working directly with military and also veterans. And I'm going to talk about 3 major points here. First of all, the work diversity that military staff are exposed during their career. I'll go into that a little bit more. And then the energy program is not a siloed program. It definitely encourages to work throughout the different departments within an organization, and I'll talk about that as well. And we can't forget that energy is a key part of national security. So those 3 major points here. Let's start with the diversity that military staff, are exposed during their career. I've observed Lieutenant JGs, Lieutenant Commanders becoming captains, and captains, becoming admirals, moving through their ranks and holding many different positions. They are engineers. They can work with in the budget department, because they're in construction, real estate, advisors, program managers. XO, COs, they manage an installation, they manage regions. They really build up an incredible resume. They learn new skills and concepts, and mostly they lead by example, and teamwork for them is very important. They depend on one another, and that teamwork, again, was very important when I was working there. There's a lot of pressure put on them, but what I always admire is the respect that they had for procedures and also the chain of command. So all this education and experience aligns with, an energy program, because as I always said, and a lot of people have heard me say this, energy is a 6-letter word that touches many processes within business. And it gives the organization energy enables interoperability across all the different departments. And I do see it here at Chicago Public Schools. I've been told that the past year that I've been here, I've brought people together to the table to discuss energy projects. And they could be budget people, they could be contract people, they could be the capital improvement folks, and so on. But we all actually are now working toward a same goal. And and that is because, again, the energy program and understanding the functions of all these different departments really help the energy projects and programs holistically. Just this morning, for example, I had to explain to our accounting team a 179D, which is an IRS tax credit based on energy improvement projects. So that was a great conversation. And then let's not forget that energy is part of national security, and we have to admit that the Navy is the branch that I worked in as a civilian, has always been an early adopter of new energy practices and technologies, and energy security is definitely a top priority for the department. Relying less on fossil fuels, increased deployment of renewable energy and energy efficiency projects, coupled with that technology, increase, energy security and economic benefits. So they're really focused on energy security, energy independence, and there's been large investments and continue to have large investments that were made on energy efficiency. And energy efficiency is important because ultimately it lowers your consumption, and eliminate wasted energy, which then when you want to implement a renewable technology, it makes it a bit easier to do so because you have less as far as getting rid of the wasted energy. But again, the energy efficiency and alternative energy projects have been really the top priority for energy security, reliability, and resilience, and reducing wasted energy. So you couple the career that the military has had, and then you see that they've been exposed. They understand that energy is a top priority. There's been a lot of different projects and innovative solutions implemented at the installation. So for me, there's no doubt that the transitioning to the civilian world as an energy in an energy world is definitely a good fit.
No, I think that's great, Sandrine. Mike, from your side and your experience, especially when you talk about automation and things like that, what are those pieces? Some of those Sandrine's already highlighted, but what are those things that folks come from a military background can really benefit some as they transition to the private sector?
Yeah, no, thanks. And I really appreciate Sandrine's comments there. She mentioned energy and it being something around national security. It's also the backbone of economy. And energy usage reflects the economy, the health of the economy, the activities, our daily lives. There's a lot of really important things we touch through the energy activities in the country. We've had a number of veterans join Emerson over time. They've really prospered inside of our company. I think they bring great leadership capabilities. They bring an achievement orientation. Typically, they have a very strong technical orientation as well, and managerial orientation. And that seems to fit the Emerson culture for whatever reasons, because they've been very successful with this, including some of our friends with the nuclear background that we so prize because we offer those kinds of products to nuclear power generation. So I think there's tremendous opportunities both inside of companies like ourselves, but also our broad customer base for anybody that's focused on energy efficiency. Everybody's trying to enhance the mix of their energy. They're trying to optimize their processes so they obviously do things more efficiently. Automation's an enabler for a lot of those things, so it's a good conversation that we get to have with our customer base around how you can utilize, more sensing, more automation, more data. There's a lot more data now in our toolkit, if you will, for measuring things, analyzing things. And I think the men and women that come to us from the military backgrounds are really well armed to be able to assist both at the customer level and whatever their business is from an energy perspective. And then if they happen to get into some of the technology spaces, I think they do very well. So quite excited to be able to address them here today.
Great, thanks, Mike. And Erica, for you, obviously you bring a couple of pieces here. You had your time when you were in particular in the military, but then when you're running the State Veterans Affairs Office and also at ComEd, both having people, maybe hiring people, but also all those contractors that you work with. So what can you share kind of related to this point?
I certainly agree with what Sandrine and Mike have said about the skill set that veterans bring back into the many roles that they're playing in the energy space. I think from my seat, what I would add is, and it's personal, but I think it'd be personal for a lot of folks, there is an appeal, I think, for a lot of veterans and transitioning service members to find something meaningful, to be a part of work that feels purposeful and that will matter in people's lives. I know for me, when I was looking to transition out of not just the military, but out of public service, I've been in public service, whether in uniform or not, for the first half of my career. I struggled with, do I want to, now I'm going to go be in the private sector, it's time to get that experience under my belt. Do I want to sell more hamburgers or more insurance. And then there was energy, right? And that felt to me like it mattered in people's lives. I'm certainly working at the utility and making sure the lights are on. But in the national security ways too, there's a particular, I think, appeal and through line for veterans that have served, where I think every one of us likely knows a friend, a squad mate, a classmate who was injured or killed in some convoy moving fuel, where if we had been more energy independent, that convoy wouldn't have even been necessary, right? So there is, I think, a draw into energy space that is real and that certainly energizes, and I didn't mean it as a pun, but it really does energize me every day. So you can consider that my pitch, I suppose, for the energy space. But that might be why we see, a higher preponderance of veterans in the space. But also, I mean, to your point, Stacey, when it comes to energy efficiency, it can be a very entrepreneurial space. A lot of the clean energy jobs that you gave the numbers for up in the beginning, a lot of those are small kind of mom and pop or one veteran, two veteran type enterprises, right? It's general contractors and air conditioning installers and electrical contractors, engineering consultants. These are small businesses, right? And there are a ton of veterans who find that path on the way out very much to be an entrepreneurial path. I mean, it's one of the three paths that the military deliberately weaves into the transition planning with service members on the way out the door. So we in Illinois have been deliberately trying to grow the diversity of how the dollars flow. There's a ton of investment. How do we make sure that flows through our communities in a way that impacts not just the end state customer who got the incentive, but the contractors and folks we work with. So sometimes that's those small businesses that ties back to that entrepreneurial spirit that veterans have. We, as an example, run an incubator program where we're looking to equip small, nascent 1 and 2 person businesses to learn energy efficiency. And we find that we have to bring in partners to help grow the broader skill set that veterans are getting in their transition training, right? Here's how you make a business plan. Here's how you get financing. So some veterans have a leg up on that if you pursue that entrepreneurial path in the transition.
Oh, I love that idea, and it is so great to think that. And when you talk about the service piece, even if you do go into a small business, what a great way to kind of have a mission and service is directly serving those customers, and what a great reward that they're going to get from that. So thank you for that. Mike, you talked a little bit about, we talked a little bit about resiliency, and kind of the grid and things like that. From your perspective, let's touch on that a little bit broader, related to your experience with automation and your 29 years you said you've been at Emerson.
I'm still a young guy. Come on.
I no, of course. But let's talk a little bit more about how we can tie that resiliency and what are those skill sets, what are those pieces that we need, and how does that really help us when it comes to energy independence and energy security?
There's been a lot of change in activities. Obviously, the onset of renewables more recently and having those assets be distributed and being different areas has really put a lot of pressure on the grid and the grid management and the grid activities that are going on. We're starting to see the emergence of, we talked earlier about, I think Erica referenced, the demand and the ability to time shift energy consumption or utilize energy at different times of day. So we're seeing a lot of interesting things technologically right now in the grid space for getting energy transported to different places. So I think there's a lot going on there. I think it's very exciting from I drive through Iowa sometimes as I'm passing from St. Louis to Minnesota, and there's a lot of windmills there. You look at those things, they're incredible creatures to stare at and think about what they're doing and how they operate and how they come onto the grid. And we have to have enough turning force on the grid so that they can come on and off of the grid in appropriate ways. And there's so many dynamics and so many interesting things going on that I think this space is going to be ripe for innovation and change, really, for the next 10 years plus, without exception. I think there's going to be a lot of activity going on, and it's quite exciting that way.
Thanks, Mike. And before we have one question from the floor that I think kind of builds right into this, and they want to know, applying IT security analytics and using that to protect IT critical infrastructure. Obviously, this is something that folks in the military and the Comms Corps have a lot of experience in. Do any of you, I don't know, Erica or Mike, maybe in particular, do you want to talk about that piece and kind of where the opportunity is?
Well, I can tell you from what we do in our control systems, the cybersecurity elements of that are very critical. Our customer base, Erica would be a customer for us, very interested in those capabilities. So it's a moving target. It's something that everybody from Department of Energy downward, everybody's involved and interested in the technologies, the software, the services, and making sure that those are assessed. So we work with our customers a lot to assess that. But Erica may have some direct experience there as well that she'd like to share.
Sure. I mean, I would say IT know-how in general is critical, and probably in every sector. But I mean, even just in how we serve customers in the day in and day out, we're running channels, integrating new software, you name it. So we have a big percent of our workforce is not linemen, out on the poles and the wires. It's IT techs, and it's a really valuable skill set that we are always hiring for. When it comes to cybersecurity, I think that is definitely a particular focus, maybe even most so for a utility like ComEd. I mean, we have all seen reports of attacks on the grid, deliberately on the energy system of different, whether that was in Ukraine or we saw one a little less impact-wise, but still there in the southern U.S. We are a target of opportunity in the new world. And so we certainly have a big cybersecurity workforce. We have some veterans in that workforce. I know it's a growing area, certainly larger in the military than it was when I was still in uniform. But I think the need is there. We hire for that. We have a lot of focus on that, maybe more so in this industry than others.
Great, thank you. And one of the things that obviously that we're talking about when we talk about all this, it is a massive amount of data that we're talking about, and it is kind of to Mike's world, automation and digitization and all of that. So there's huge opportunities there. But I also want to talk about how we're managing that load. So let's transition a little bit. Erica, when we talk about renewables and an increase, the growing interest in using renewables and renewables coming online, how does ComEd manage to, and then your parent company Exelon, how do you make sure that the supply and the demand are matching? And how do we make sure that we take advantage of new technologies and enable them to serve us, but balance out how much energy we're generating and then how much we're using?
It's kind of the question in our space right now, right? So you could take that question in a ton of directions. There is, we are transitioning from a world where you run a power grid and all the power flow is one direction. It's from the generating station and you are delivering it through a pipeline to the customer's home. And in the future, as more solar comes on, especially rooftop solar and what we call distributed energy resources, where it is the customer's resource on their rooftop or on their warehouse that we need to integrate into the grid, the whole system changes and it becomes multi-directional power flows. And the sun shines when the sun shines, right? So there are times when you have too much energy coming on and you need to then really work to balance the load. It's just the physics of it, right? And so I guess two lenses I can answer that from. One is there's a whole bunch of technology we on the utility side need to develop and adopt to be able to do that, technically speaking. Some of that is software on the grid side, management systems that help integrate those distributed technologies and watch it so you know what's coming on the grid and you can flip inverters to have power flow the other way and have various customers respond when you need to balance in a particular area. So there's kind of a grid side operations software question to this. And I'll always think from this side, there's also a customer side and a technology side to it as well. And that's that, if you buy solar or you're working with customers who buy solar or who have a smart thermostat or a smart water heater, the way that any customer can make best value from that resource is kind of connecting it to a system where we can reward and put programs and incentives around them shifting their usage. And ideally in an invisible way, right? So through technology that helps trigger the shifting of load and helps us to do that balancing. And so that means we need to be thinking through how do we help customers connect to the utility system through aggregators, through programs we might offer where we go from very static, calling an event on a peak time savings thing that we might do once a year now, to doing it in a much more kind of local, specific, targeted, and integrated way. So we're working through now what are the kind of softwares we need, but also how do we evolve our programs so that it matches that future reality of much more real-time, location-specific need. That is actually what provides most value to customers in the end. And then I guess the second lens I would say there is just generally when you think of the whole system, think of the whole kind of power grid in Northern Illinois, including Chicago. If we want to be 100% renewable, and I think that's definitely our goal, right? You need to integrate enough solar, whether on rooftops or big solar installations, that you can meet that peak demand of everybody running their AC in the summer, right? So you got to build up a certain amount. Ideally, not too much because you've lessened through energy efficiency what the whole system needs. But you don't need all of that energy at every point in the year, right? So you're building for a peak summer demand that the system can't really accommodate. There isn't enough load. There's not enough customer usage or demand to absorb all that energy as it comes on the system. A big part of how we will be able to balance that over time, we need to electrify. So electric vehicles, which I think we all want anyway and are coming anyway, how does that technology in advance, how do we pull it forward so you can kind of add load onto the system, and in ways like with EVs where you can kind of smart charge and help customers charge at the right kind of day, at the right time of day to make the system work well and be efficient. So we really look quite closely at EV technology and other building electrification technology as things we will have to be thinking on and integrating, and that customers will want anyway. And how do we interact with them on it?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Sandrine, I wanted to ask you, obviously the city of Chicago has said it has some stated goals, again, as we've been talking about 100% renewable energy. How do you manage that? And especially when you're talking about, you have a lot of older buildings. And right. So how are you making sure that you can make them as most efficient as possible? And what are some of the opportunities that are there in the future?
So Stacey, that was actually the first thing I was told when I joined CPS. Oh, the mayor's goal is to be 100% renewable by 2025, and quite a goal that I definitely support. Just like what Erikas explained to us, and how alternative energy and technology can definitely again increase resilience and energy independence and energy security within our city here. But as far as Chicago Public Schools, is a little bit of background. Right now, we have what we call the supply contract in place that goes through December 2023. So we're currently not purchasing any renewables generation at this time, but that's going to be changing. We'll have the ability to purchase. We have the ability to purchase RECs, a green strategy for any or all months between now and the expiration of our contract. But I just wanted to say that the city, if you did not already know, has issued or will issue an RFP with the goal of selecting an electricity supplier who can deliver renewable generations to equal 100% of their annual electricity requirement for city buildings by 2025. And the renewable generation options are going to be new build, wind, solar, and storage projects, generation from existing wind and solar projects, or RECs. So I can tell you that, we are looking at options, A and B, new build wind, solar, and storage projects. We're looking at 2 schools for a potential large-scale solar projects. And these projects will definitely expand beyond 2025 throughout the Chicago Public School portfolio. But it's also important to note that what we like to do is not only meeting that goal, but it will also include job growth and address climate crisis, and it will definitely be an educational benefit for our students while we are lowering cost of our utility, which again, any dollar saved is a dollar that we can recoup for our students and our staff program. So again, we're looking at the larger scale of solar and storage projects for some of our schools. You're right, I do have a lot of challenges because some of the schools are very old, and some of them are, were just came online last year. So it makes it quite a challenge to know where to have the best solution at the schools here.
Thanks very much. Erica, I'm gonna call on you one more time. According to the EIA, which is the Energy, oh, I forgot. Duh, I'm in trouble. I forgot my
The
own
Information
acronym there.
Agency,
Thank you.
potentially?
That's exactly right. The Energy Information Agency. I appreciate that. According to them, the US now has 80 million smart meters installed across residential and commercial buildings. Obviously, we're talking about all this data. You had already talked a little bit about, if houses sometimes are generating and they're receiving and they're taking and all of these kind of things. What does smart meters what does that opportunity represent for all of us?
Yeah, well, a ton, right? So we actually just finished deploying smart meters across northern Illinois over the last several years, and so we were seeing and living a little bit what it can mean for customers, both today and even what we can think toward in the future. Smart meters are what enable us to see, and for customers to themselves see and understand what is your energy usage in more real time, in kind of 30-minute intervals, and to better understand and respond to your energy use in light of that. So, right now, because we have smart meters in place, we can ping a meter and know if the problem is on our end or yours when you're out, and then avoid truck rolls. But from a more like energy usage and savings perspective, we can also alert you as a customer when you are spending more and send you a high usage alert based on the threshold that you set, so that we can help customers control that energy use and the cost associated with it. So that's all smart meter enabled. And there's a suite of tools that our customers have right now to be able to see what's happening and with recommended actions to take in light of it. They get a lot more sophisticated when it comes to, you might be, as I say customer, you might be thinking the person in the house. A lot of times for us, the customer is a commercial customer, an industrial customer. And when it comes to smart meter data and the software that a lot of people are pairing up with that and algorithms to analyze that data, those get really powerful and can help drive really big savings for customers. So we have a tool we call our Business Energy Analyzer tool that customers can self-serve with, and they do, and to really identify what actions can I take. And actually it proved really useful during COVID. We have a power takeoff vendor and tool that we work with for virtually just looking at how is the operation of this facility working on the industrial side, where you can identify, that area should be lower in power at this time of day, and just targeted operational opportunities that right then customers can make. And amidst COVID, we took a look at, could you identify businesses that were non-essential? We all had a stay-at-home order. So you would have expected that their energy use should have gone way down, and it didn't, right? And so we actually did that look at Chicago Public Schools and said, well, there's nobody in the buildings right now. All the students are at home. Where are we seeing not as much decrease in the energy use as we should? And then we reached out and we worked with the engineers on the facility, the building engineers, to make sure that they could adjust. So that's all smart meter enabled, right? And that's just today, those services for customers. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're kind of one of these mom and pop shops, these are the tools you can use to sell work, right, to customers in the future, because you can have access to those softwares and those tools, and it's what enables and informs what's the next energy efficiency project that I should do as a business customer. And I also think moving forward, the opportunity from a kind of using that smart meter data perspective is kind of unlimited, right? Now I've just given these micro tools today, opportunities, use cases, but I mean, moving forward, we can disaggregate load. That people have kind of built algorithms around not just what's the energy use at a given time, but given the signature of that energy use inside it, we can tell how much of that is your HVAC versus your refrigerator. And you can use that data, there are softwares out there that do this, to say, you know what, that thing's on the fritz. That's not a normal usage pattern. The fridge is out of whack. And we're starting to see companies offer kind of warranty products around the service offerings, right? So if you can identify that the HVAC is starting to come off its normal pattern, or that the solar panel isn't producing what it normally does, you can offer a monthly fee, low cost service warranty to customers and do that proactively. They never even knew it was coming, and make a profit off that, right? And so that all comes from data analytics and really creative entrepreneurs.
And if I can add that, to Erica, thank you for mentioning CPS and us working with your Energy Analyzer tool. Again, I can't speak highly enough of the ComEd team that has been supporting me for the past year, and they've really helped us with our utility data. And what I also want to add when you get meter data is couple the meter data with other information. So what we have done at CPS is taking the usage at the facility level and coupled it with facility geographical information and weather data, and the survey that aligns with what we call CBEX. So now I have the engineers that have a benchmark that they can measure against, and within our tool, we communicate that to them on a monthly basis. Ultimately, to tell them how efficient their facilities are and so on. Then what we're also leveraging is a virtual commissioning program. So I have somebody that is remotely accessing not only the meter data, but also our building automation data. And we can go down to granularity on our hair handler units or RTUs, or seeing a room that is not occupied that's 100 degrees when it's like 50 degrees outside and so on, and bring that up to the engineer and understand what is going on with our assets. Erica, you brought up a good point. As soon as we were told that schools were going to shut down, that was my first priority, is following the consumption profile of each of these schools. And you're right, we've seen some schools that were actually consuming even more than when the students were in it. And again, that's part of the education on getting the information, but also, and Mike will probably agree to that, is how to use that technology that you're implementing in a school. If you have a building automation system, make sure that the engineer is fully trained on using the system, so they can do a schedule. They can change the schedule accordingly based on occupancy. And that's been, again, leveraging a ComEd program. The virtual commissioning has been also a learning experience for me on how to train the people to use all of this automated technology that we're implementing in our facilities, so that this information that we're capturing can become actionable information, and we can act upon it. And we can identify energy efficiency projects, which again, reduces wasted energy, lowers our costs and so on, and gets our facilities more efficient and healthy and safe.
Mike, anything else you want to share? You're nodding aggressively here, so I think you're agreeing with what Erica and Sandrine are saying.
I love this use case, the COVID situation, the schools, real time, being able to leverage, the sensing capability or the metering capability, or even just the smart thermostats. I mean, just everybody having a smart thermostat, letting it manage a little more, giving, as soon as you have more insight, your behavior starts to change. So I think all of those elements coming together in that story, for that example, was absolutely perfect. I really appreciated that.
So Mike,
as a big company ourselves, we're trying to green Emerson, and we're doing exactly the same thing that we're talking about here. We're understanding our energy usage, we're exploring it, and then we're installing LED lighting, we're upgrading our own, even though we make them, we're upgrading our own air conditioning technologies. And I think everybody's trying to go down this path to do these types of things, really across industry, across all walks of life.
Absolutely. I think it's just an understanding. We're now going to all have so much information coming to us. It's a question is how do we use it and how do we not get overwhelmed by it? Obviously, I work in energy efficiency, so I have a lot of people that love all the bells and whistles. And one of the gentlemen that I work with, he got a note on his phone for something that was spiking at like unusual times in his electric usage. And he's a data person, so he just couldn't resist jumping into it. And it turns out it was when his wife was getting up to blow dry her hair before she went to the hospital, because she's a nurse. But anyways, it just shows you how it all comes together. You have to find the connection on that one.
Absolutely.
But Mike, let me ask you one other question. We got a question from one of our attendees. Do you guys have examples of these digital solutions really having a positive impact on dealing with energy theft, and kind of digging into that security issue?
There are cases of that taking place, and I think the ability to understand your patterns of use, your history, being able to compare that to current, There's a balancing, of course, where energy should be in the system and where it's at. Um, Probably not so much in the electricity grid standpoint, but we see a lot of that in the natural gas, the movements of natural gas pipelines, those kinds of things, measuring masses, balancing masses. So yeah, absolutely, there is absolutely a security metric here, or set of metrics that can be um, utilizing the automation and the measurements to do that. So you hope in the United States there's not much of that going on, but there's always a little bit at the edges, and I'm sure we all have seen some cases of that. So, but absolutely, that's one of the use cases, one of the great use cases. One other thing I want to mention while we're in the automation discussion is around digital twins and simulation. That's where the world's moving to right now. We've been helping some of our utility customers implement some early versions where we kind of replicate the power plant in a software format, if you were, a digital format. So that a lot of these engineers can actually experiment in the replica copy, if you will, testing out different strategies. And then when they get satisfied, because you can run your time sequence differently, and then you come back and kind of implement changes in the real automation program. So we're starting to see a lot more digital twin kind of activity, simulation activity, and it's also a great training device. I think if it hasn't already happened, we're going to see a lot of our incoming talent starting to have the opportunity to train on those types of tools as well.
Erica, did you have anything else that you wanted to share?
Just on the energy theft, I mean, that used to be quite manual work for ComEd. And as a utility, your interest in that is when that's happening, it hurts every other customer, right? Because it's just the way that you kind of set rates. And when you just lose that energy, everybody else ends up paying for it. So we're always trying to make sure we're preventing that kind of customer to customer. And that used to be quite manual work. Now it is entirely digital. It is people at the computer identifying where the usage doesn't match the fact that there is no customer at that account, or it's 3 times the load of the normal multifamily dwelling there, what's happening, and you find the interesting things happening on site. So it's all transitioned to digital, again, thanks to the smart meter technology.
So as we're talking about data and we're talking about kind of new clean energy technologies, let's turn it a little bit. Let's talk about, and this is a question that came in from one of our attendees, how can we use some of this new technology, this new data, this new clean economy to help with low income populations? And how can we make sure that we're serving them and they're able, some of the ones that are the first to benefit from it as opposed to the last? So Erica, maybe I can start with you on that one first.
Yeah, I mean, even just shy of technology, I think in general, when it comes to clean energy, it takes a lot of intentional kind of policy and implementation work to make sure that the advantages come to all communities. And that's why utility exists, right? So as we implement our energy efficiency programs, the law is crafted such that we have a deliberate, gotta hit $25 million a year spend, and we've actually committed now 42 million, over that legal commitment, to make sure that the dollars flow in a way that it benefits communities who most need it. So programmatically, most states have that, and it means that there's interesting offerings that service providers of the mom and pop sort that I mentioned earlier are directly serving low income customers. But from a technology perspective, we have a behind the meter innovation lab where we're like actively digging on this question, because so much of what we've talked about has to do with, you can hear it, smart thermostats and smart homes, and underlying all of that is Wi-Fi. And underlying all of that is a digital divide that prevents a lot of customers from taking advantage of it. And so some of the things that we are working on are, how do you help customers access those savings and automation abilities from technology without Wi-Fi, or without draining, a lot of the way the Wi-Fi access happens is you're using cell data, which is not an effective way to do a lot of what we've been talking about. So we've like 3D printed devices where we are we're using the ComEd paging network to send signals to low income customers on a device that we're giving them to say, to give the pricing signal as an example. We're working with technology companies that have developed ways to create an in-home network that doesn't hinge on Wi-Fi, so that we can help customers have a smart home through a smart plug and a smart thermostat at low cost, and incent that through our energy efficiency programs. But you got to really work deliberately to be very creative. And sometimes 3D print things in order to kind of cross that digital divide and ensure that the kind of benefits are there for everybody.
And then again, Erica, one of the great programs that ComEd has established when it comes to energy efficiency and clean technology and is the public building in distressed area within the Chicago area. And the Chicago, I actually, we launched the BBDC energy efficiency program about 4 or 5 months ago. And through that BBDC offering, ComEd provides lighting kits at no charge to qualified, public sector entities within the Southwest area of Chicago. And that program actually aligns also with the mayor's office, invest in the Southwest area. And the team, because some of the schools are in those distressed areas, some of the schools are receiving the benefits of LED lighting and also improvement in their HVAC, the HVAC improvements within the schools. So about 400 of our schools are eligible for this free energy efficiency lighting kits and incentives, which again, all the savings that we're going to recoup in providing, technology to the school or, additional funding to the programs. But the one thing that also improves on doing this, it gives, it's for the students, giving them a better learning environment. And that was really key for us to leverage the PBDC, program from ComEd.
Yeah, one thing I'll share real quick, and I think Mike might have had something to share as well. One thing that we've learned at MIA is, unfortunately, those folks that are in lower income households, what they're paying on their energy costs are sometimes twice or 3 times as much as what other folks are paying. So the more that we can focus on investments that we can target, either policies or other incentives or working in private partnerships to support those communities is just better for all of us, and it's something that we should all prioritize. Absolutely. So I'm glad to hear all that. Mike, did you have anything else to share on this discussion topic?
Well, a little bit slant on this is really around skills development and, working in these regions with high schools, technical schools, trying to build up the base of skill sets from within these communities so that, we can create good paying jobs, but also they can come back and make the impact in these communities. We think that's really important. I think many of us in different activities, either in the company or beyond the company, we're trying to make some impact that way and trying to reach these groups. So being focused on the skills development and making that as universally available as possible, I think is a really important piece of this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And that's a good transition too to talk about as we talk about skills development. I think all of you did a great job on the front end of this of talking about what the military training and what even some of those transition activities that Erica talked about really help people go to the private sector. But is there different advice that you can give for folks that are were just enlisted, maybe only have an associate's degree or something like that, a path that they should take versus someone who's been in 20 years and is retired from military service but is looking to still work? I'll just throw that out there to anybody who wants to answer it.
It's tricky because I think this is why the military now has huge transition programs to help a much more individual navigation on that question. I think anybody who served in uniform recently knows of the GI Bill benefits that are out there, and I think you got to know that it's broader than just the college course you might take, right? So, as an example, ComEd just got certified on the job training to have an entrance path onto doing line work with us as a company. You wouldn't think you could use your GI Bill benefits to help support you in early on the job training as you're coming into serving with the utility, right? So I think the options out there are pretty broad, and that you really need to pay attention in the midst of those kind of transition pathways that the Army and the Navy and the multiple services are putting together to understand the full breadth of it. Because, if you say you want to go be one of these mom and pop shops, right, out doing energy efficiency and HVAC work, you can get HVAC certified using your GI Bill benefits, right? You don't need to have some special degree to go do some of this work. There's a really broad world of options out there regardless of the background. And you can generally marry your GI Bill benefit to how you want to enter the field.
No, that's great to know. And I do want to share, this isn't in my remarks of what I'm supposed to say, but I have learned that the Atlantic Council, through Veterans Advanced Energy Week, there is a job board that I encourage folks to use. I know that they're working out with all of the sponsors to try to promote opportunities. So for all the folks that are listening today, I really hope that you pay attention to that and take advantage of that opportunity, because as we've all talked about, there are jobs out there. We just want to make sure to match the folks with them. Let's end with just one more thing. We only have a few more minutes to go. Mike, we've talked a little bit about, and this is the U.S. Department of Energy, we've all been joking, loves to make up these crazy terms that don't make sense to anybody else. And one of the new ones is grid interactive efficient buildings. A GEB is what they call it. As we think of buildings, Erica talked about it a little bit, but Mike, from an automotive perspective, both residential and commercial, what is on the horizon for us? I think the potential is endless, but what do you see in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of focus on these building automation systems. I think Sandrine referenced those earlier in the conversation. And those have advanced in their capabilities. They used to be on-premise only. They're now connected. They're even cloud connected, so they have the ability to move information around. I think on the utility side, also with the smart technologies, the two-way grids now, the ability to manage grid traffic from all these distributed assets. I think we're going to see more and more focus on how the interactivity of the data and the energy beside it working together is going to come along. So the Department of Energy is putting efforts into that. I think we all see little tastes of that from different perspectives in the industry. But I think as people think about energy efficiency kind of in its truest way, we need to be living and doing things with 10, 15, 20% less energy utilization as an intensity concept. And we're looking at these technologies and these really smart enabled grid demand, almost transaction by transaction. I want some electrons, here's my electrons. I mean, right down to that level, trying to make these buildings able to interact with our systems in that way as we go forward. So a lot of digital tools are going to be required, a lot of database tools are required, and really a lot of change in infrastructure. I mean, there's going to be tremendous infrastructure change needed to get to that stage. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot of decisions around how to invest and how that infrastructure advances to be able to take advantage of this and deliver these buildings effectively as we go forward.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that is when you talk about that and all the change in the infrastructure that's needed and how we're transitioning, gosh, that seems like such a tremendous amount of job opportunities that are going to be there, and really things for people to take advantage of. Yeah,
these are big industries, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's so great. And I think the other thing that people don't realize is not all of this is just in the large urban areas. I mean, obviously with energy, we need it all across the country. So it's something that happens in the city, in the suburbs, and in the rural areas as well. So we want to make sure to focus on that. Erica or Sandrine, anything else as we talk about kind of the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually just on this GEB, if we're using the acronym point, I think it highlights how the kind of breadth of opportunity that there is in terms of the jobs in the energy efficiency space, just to kind of double down on that point. It can be static, right? It can be kind of energy efficiency and the jobs that is. It can be LED distribution and food kit distribution and kind of manual work inside processes in factories. Or it can be, and it increasingly will be, how do you add smarts to the LEDs? And so turn that building from a user of energy into, in some ways, a resource to the grid that can be a producer of energy, even at times, in that kind of negative load sense, right? It can become very dynamic. So it can be quite manual and hands-on if that's kind of what you're wanting to be in the midst of. It can be very tech savvy and will increasingly be so. I mean, I think GEBS is just a good example of that.
Yes, thank you. Sandrine, any other thing on that point you'd like to share?
Just that, it's a great, and I think including building as a great asset is definitely going to bring a lot of benefits. But I just want to, make sure that people, it's not an easy process. It's going to be a complex process that requires proper planning, but can create tangible value across key stakeholders to include utilities, grid operators, building owners, building occupants, and so on. But the optimization as a grid interaction and bringing this automation solution is good for business, as we are talking about, and it's as well as very good for the environment.
Absolutely. That's one thing we actually haven't really talked about today is not only is all of this good from the economic development side and good for all of us as we can save more money, but obviously it all reduces emissions and is good for the environment for all of us. So that is a great note to end on today. So I want to thank all of the speakers today. This was a great conversation. I also wanted to share with you that there will be a recap of this. You can stream it. There's a catched replay that'll be available on the Atlantic Council's YouTube channel after the conference. And then next up on our program at 4 Eastern time is a panel conversation on the future of the electric grid. So we're having a great transition today. So we're really glad that everyone is participating today. Thank you all to my speakers. It was a great conversation, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. You too, Stacey. Thank you so much, everyone.